Right. All right. So good morning, everyone. So we'll
Good
start
morning, sir.
today's. Good morning. So we'll start the today's session. So as I requested last time, if possible, if you are comfortable, just leave your videos on so that I know that I'm speaking to a bunch of humans. Uh, and also it will kill my boredom as well. Otherwise, speaking to a couple of letters and couple of two letters and black holes, it's not a pleasant experience as a lecturer. Anyway, so I'll leave it with you. Um, so I hope you have done the homework. I think in the sense, I assume that you would have gone through the friendly guide to the research proposal. I believe this has been shared by the office and it's on your Moodle as well. So based on the content what we have covered, so I assume at least you could have done on the especially on the research proposal, right? On the research proposal, I believe that you can done up to the first chapter, right? Because during last session we covered the business how to define the um, business problem and opportunities and the research problems, how to frame research questions, and how to write a research aim, and also the difference between the research objective and the rationale, and also the little bit on the research limitations as well. And also we discuss about the literature review as well. So sorry, not actually up to introduction. In fact, you could have done up to at least second session, rather second chapter two. Generally, we refer as chapter in this academic research. We call them chapter, right? So chapter one typically includes the introduction in terms of research proposal, and chapter two typically refers to the literature review, right? So we discuss about the independent variable, dependent variable.
යුද්ධම ප්‍රශ්න අහනවා. ඒකට වැඩි අවුල් කරනවා. මේ ගිය සතිය මං ගෙදර පොර මොකද්ද එකක් කියවන්නේ කියලා මං අනිත් කටේ කැමරාව
Guys, if you're not using the camera, using the mic, I would appreciate if you could mute yourself unless you have a question to do so. Yeah, so basically, until last week we covered the literature review. So ideally, you could have covered at least 500, 700 words to cover the introduction and the literature review. So if you have not done it, so this is not a BSc level class. So I assume that you'd have done your homework by now. Otherwise, don't leave it till the last minute to submit the proposal, because it will be daunting task to do the catching up work, and especially given the fact that you are doing the research for the first time, right? Yeah, and also there's an announcement from the academic office as well. So after today's session, guys, please feel free to submit. Please feel free to submit the research landscape document, right? So it's available on the Moodle. So you don't have to do it right now. After the session, you can download that particular document, the research landscape document, fill it and upload it to the Moodle as well. Yeah, so that's one of the requirement. Right. Again, I repeat, guys, so don't wait until the last minute. Do your work beforehand so that you will have adequate time, right? Okay, so let's move on to the today's session. So today, actually, we are gonna cover again a critical area. It may sound pretty technical, right? But then again, you don't have to worry, or rather you don't have to memorize everything, right? So anyway, all the context what I'm going to discuss is available on the Moodle, the presentation as well. But I will be highlighting the areas or other certain methodologies that we are going to follow. So therefore, if you can concentrate on that particular piece itself, would make your life pretty easy, right? So let's see what we have discussed today. So today, as you can see on the screen, so basically we'll discuss about key research philosophies, because as I discussed last time, so academic writing, it's not about writing a report, right? So So there are certain conventions that have been followed in academia. So that's what we are trying to align ourselves to, right? So we will be discussing about key research philosophies and certain philosophical stances, right? And don't worry about these terms, ontology, epistemology, axiology, right? So don't worry about it, right? And also to have a little bit of understanding about, what's qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method, research looks like, and certain ethical consideration as well. Yeah. I hope my slide is moving. Can someone
Yes,
could someone
yes,
explain?
yes,
sir. It's
All
more.
right, thank you.
It's okay.
Right. So when at the time that you are doing a research for the first time, I think there are certain, I would say the gold standard. So the first thing comes into play is the research onion. So that's something that you can't avoid, anyone who's getting into the research, right? So it's pretty famous. The same as example, let's say the Porter, popular for known for his work in relation to strategy. So Saunders and his team is pretty popular, or rather they have the sort of authority in terms of the research, right? So that's why lots of researchers, their starting point is the research methodologies have developed by the Saunders and the team, right? So as you can see, this is called the research onion. So why you call the research onion is it works like you have to peel it off to get to the core, right? So that's why you call the research onion. So how it works is, guys, so basically this will the research onion will help the first time research, or not only first time, even for us to design I would say a coherent and a systematic approach for our studies, right? And since it's, as I said, since it's designed like onion with 6 layers, representing the key decision that we have to take as researchers, right? From broad philosophical assumptions to specific data collection techniques, right? So typically, if we break it down, if you can see on the slide. So typically it speak about the research philosophy, which we'll discuss in detail, and it will discuss about the research philosophy, the research strategy, and the choices, and the time horizon, and the technique and procedures, right? So it's pretty important that we get this right, so that it will be easy for you to drill down to the core areas of your research, right? So typically, the the outer layer, right? So outer layer, which is a research philosophy. So generally, there are three main philosophy, three core areas, or rather three pillars. One is positivism, interpretivism, and the pragmatism, right? So positivism is example, it's like believe in objective reality. Oh, it's like it's, and also it's measurable through quantitative data, right? And interpretism means it's focused on the subjective meanings, and it use qualitative methods, right? So that's difference between the positivism and the interpretism. Positivism, it use the quantitative data, and interpretism use the qualitative methods, right? So pragmatism, as you can understand by the word itself, it combines both depending on the research problem, right? And if you can see the onion, the other piece of the onion, one peel is a research approach, right? So there are two core main areas that we take in terms of research approach. One is deductive, and another one is inductive approach, right? So deductive approach, it's I think we discussed it some time back as well. So deductive means you test the existing theories, right? So we use the existing theory, move on the quantitative perspective, and we try to, and we technically test the existing theory, right? So the other one is the inductive research approach. So there, what you're going to do is you are not leveraging on the existing one, but you are build new theories. And what happens is those are more for qualitative ones, right? And then goes to the third layer, so which is the research strategy. So then we have to decide what sort of methodical plan or other experiments that we are going to do, whether it's case studies, surveys, or ethnography. So we have to decide what we are going to do, right? Don't worry, so we'll discuss everything in detail, but we are still at the first slide, rather that the conceptual framework of the research onion, right? And then it goes to the choices. So where we have to decide whether it's monomethod, mixed method, or multi-method, right? And so next one is time horizon, which goes to the cross-sectional. It can be example data collected at one point in time. So that there are two. One is cross-sectional, other one is the longitudinal, right? So they are data collected over an extended period of time. And the final one is the techniques and the procedure. So how we to finalize the data collection tools, whether it's survey, interviews, and observations, right? So that's high level how this research how this research onion works. But we'll be discussing each and every layer in detail as we move along. Yeah. So let me move on to the next slide. Right. So next slide, basically, as you can see, we are going to discuss about ontology, epistemology, and axiology, right? So the ontology, epistology, and axiology, if you really understand, it's a foundational concept of research philosophy that typically shapes the research approach, for our studies, right? And so this actually forms the first layer of the research onion, as you can see, as you saw during the first slide, right, which is the research philosophy. And it will guide the overall design and the interpretation of the research. So don't worry, I'll give you some examples as well, how it works, right? And also you don't have to memorize all these terminologies, but understand what actually includes and the essence of it, right? So if you take ontology in isolation, so in terms of definition, it trying to understand the study of the nature of reality, right? If you put it down to one key question, what we are asking is, what is real, right? So on that, the objectivism, or if not the positivist, typically it says that the reality exists independently of human perception. Example, if you take physical laws, or the measurable facts, sorry. And so other one is the subjectivism. So subjectivism, it's about it meaning so what it implies is the reality is socially constructed and varies between individuals. So if you take example, cultural norms, personal experiences, right? So those are under subjectivism, right? So in terms of so example in research, positivists, if not the objectivists, might study example unemployment rates by using statistical data, right? The positive or the other example for the interpretivist is they might explore how individual experience unemployment through interviews, right? So that's a difference. So remember, ontology, it's about asking the key question of what is real, right? And the definition is the study of the nature of reality. So in contrast, so epistemology, so the key question that we ask from that is, how can we know what is real, right? So the definition, the definition to it is, the epistemology is a study of how knowledge is acquired and validated, right? So the ontology, remember again, it's a study of the nature of the reality, and the epistemology is about the study of how knowledge is acquired and validated. Yeah, so that's the difference. So if I take example in research, again under epistemology, research philosophy, positivists might use example a survey to test hypothesis about the consumer behavior, right? Whereas then an interpretivist might use the focus group to understand the consumer motivation, right? And so let me go to the third one, the axiology. So example, that the key question what we'll be asking is, what role do value play in research, right? Again, I'll repeat the three difference. So the ontology, the key question is, what is real, right? Or rather, we test the nature of the reality. And in epistemology, we ask the question of how can we know what is real, right? And what you're trying to understand by epistemology is the study of how knowledge is acquired and validated, right? Whereas axiology, what we are trying to do there is, so we ask a key question of um, what role do values play in research, right? And it's a test of the, or rather study of the values and ethics in research, right? That's what the axiology works. Example, if you put it to the real pragmatic research context, so it can be example, disclosing conflict of interest in a study on pharmaceutical funding, right? I think we discussed this as an example as well. And also it could be, avoiding leading question into interviews to minimize bias. I think we discussed this as well, trying to uh, hold on. Sorry, guys. Yeah. So I think we discussed it last time as well. So example, it could be the disclosing a conflict of interest, the studies in relation to the what you do in pharmaceutical industry, and avoiding leading questions in interviews to minimize biases, right? And again, if you summarize how the research onion will fit into the research, right? And the role of these each three philosophies: ontology, epistemology, and axiology. So again, ontology, it determines whether you review reality as a objective or subjective. And epistemology, it shapes how you gather and validate the knowledge, right? Meaning simply the qualitative versus quantitative. And axiology, it speaks about the general ethical decisions and acknowledge the role of values in your research, right? So why these three philosophies are matters is, so as I said earlier, so the ontology, it defines your assumption about the reality, right? Your understanding. And epistemology, on the other hand, determines your methods and the investigating that reality, right? Meaning your hypothesis, right? And axiology ensure your research is ethically sound and transparent, right? Um, so example, let's say if if you're doing a research on bank employee motivation in remote work, I think we took this example last time as well. So if you put into both three, this particular research question, rather, the research topic, the bank employee motivation in remote work. So if you put into these three buckets, the ontology, so it's about what you're trying to understand is, example, do you believe in motivation is a measurable trait, right? Or is it as a experience? So whereas epistemology, and during the epistemology, you will use the surveys, right? Surveys or interviews, right? And axiology, then you will try to understand how will you address the biases if personally favor remote work, right? So that's, at high level, how these three philosophies differ. Yeah. And so the research philosophy, as I discussed during the previous slide as well as in the onion, so there are four key philosophies, as you can see. So which are the positivism, the realism, the interpretivism, and the pragmatism, right? So and basically it explains how they shape our research design. And we'll give you a bit of a breakdown on, it's already been mentioned here, but I will articulate more with examples directly taken from the banking and finance as well, so that you could relate it better, right? So let's take the first one, the positivism. So positivism, the core idea of positivism is it assumes that objective reality that can be measured quantitatively, right? Remember it, right? So assume the objective reality can be measured quantitatively, right? Uh, on if you take into ontology, it's about objectivism, and epistemology, it's a knowledge which is derived from the observable empirical data. So if you put into the banking and finance example, let's say uh, you are studying a relationship between interest rate hikes, let's say by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and the stock market volatility by using a statistical model, right? So that's positivism for you, right? An example, so this kind of a topic might include testing hypothesis, like example, high interest. So your hypothesis is high interest rate reduce the corporate borrowing and slower the economic growth, right? And to do that, the methods what you'll be using is you may be using the surveys and the regression analysis and the big data analytics on stock prices and loan default rates, right? So that's how the positivism, uh, the philosophy works, right? So and if you take the realism, so realism, there the core idea is, so reality exists independently of human perception, but acknowledge that understanding of it is imperfect, right? And ontology, its objects exist even it's imperfectly understood. And epistemology, it combines objective observation with recognition of hidden structures, right? So if you put into a banking and finance, related, specific example. So realism, it's about understanding or rather analyzing how the central bank policies, let's say for an example, quantitative easing followed by the Fed some time back, how it, influence inflation, and the even if the mechanisms is, pretty complex and not fully observable, right? Because it's not something, transparent as interest rates, right? So therefore, investigating hidden factors like market sentiment, deriving. Another example can be the investigating sort of hidden factors like market sentiment, deriving cryptocurrency price fluctuations, right? So the to do this kind of research through realism, so probably what you'll be using is the mixed quantitative and qualitative approach to understand the underlying economic realities, right? So interpretism, so there the core idea, it's about the realities, core idea, it's about the realities are socially constructed, emphasizing subjective meanings and context, right? And typically ontology, it's a subjectivism, and epistemology, its knowledge is gained through understanding human behavior and interactions. And so the banking and finance example, it could be uh, how cultural norms influence investment decision in Islamic banking, right? Example, it can be avoiding interest-based products, right? Or it could be interviewing retail investors to understand the emotional response to market crashes, right? Example, if you're into stock market, I'm sure you know that example, the panic selling or the holding, how it will, how emotional responses would impact. Uh, what has happened here? That's my guys, can you see my screen or has it changed or something?
We can't say, sir.
Give me a second. Let me quickly log out and log in. I am having a problem. Just give me a second. Let me share the presentation. Is my screen is visible now?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Right. So we were discussing about interpretation, right? And also we were discussing about the certain examples on from the banking and finance. So how the cultural norms will influence the investment decision. Example we took was the Islamic banking, and yeah, and so the other one was to interview the investors to understand emotional responses, emotional responses in relation to the market crashes. Example, what you took was panic selling and the holding, right? And so the methods what we'll be using is typically the interviews, the focus groups, ethnographic studies to understand the investor behavior. So in contrast, the what we will be using is the pragmatism, right? And so that's the most, that is a mean that we can't do other three, but then again for us what is more relevant and more relevant and the pragmatic approach would be use the pragmatism, right? That's what we'll be using. So please you can make a note of it. Instead of studying all four, you can actually pay attention to the pragmatism, right? So there what we are going to discuss is, so the core idea of pragmatism is about it actually focus on the practical solutions, right? Practical solution which combines method based on the research question, right? So they are the ontology and epistemology. It's flexible. It uses what works based on the problem, right? So example in banking and finance, it could be about studying fintech adoption by combining surveys. So when I say combining survey, it can be using a quantitative data on usage rates as well as interviews on interviews. So meaning we are gathering the uh, qualitative insights, let's say for example on user trust in digital wallets, right? And another one would be let's say evaluating the effectiveness of ESG by analyzing both financial returns, that works like a quantitative, and stakeholder perception, which is qualitative, right? So the in terms of methods, as you heard it from me, since we use both qualitative and quantitative, so we are using the mixed method research, such as research as well as uh, case studies to understand this at high level, right? So we'll do a little bit of a additional work on the pragmatism, right? So I think I added a slide, so you don't have to actually memorize, right? So the core areas that I discuss, how it applicable in each areas that I have mentioned here, right? So this is available on the Moodle, or if not, you can take a screenshot and keep it as well. Yeah. So let's discuss about the pragmatism, since we are actually following more on that to understand why as a set of students who are studying MSc in finance, why we should adopt the pragmatism, right? So first one, in my view, what I can think of is, so it gives the flexibility to address the complex financial problems, right? So example, uh, the challenges what we have, especially the banking and finance relation research, typically involves multi-dimensional issues, right? Example, it can be fintech adaptation, and as a result the regulatory compliance and the behavioral finance also will comes into play, and where that cannot be fully understood a simple philosophical lens, right? So if you adapted the philosophies, you will not be able to understand the dynamics nature of this, right? And the most importantly, the pragmatism, it allows the mixed method research, right? So that where it combine both qualitative and quantitative data. So as example, as we discussed last time, or rather previous slide. So that will help us to use the both to example understand the statistical the stock market trends by using the statistical analysis, and we can understand the investor behavior through interviews. So you can see how it covers both qualitative and quantitative data, right? And so if I may give another example, let's say if you are since AI is one of the hot topics in the market, example, it can be studying the impact of AI-driven chatbots on customer satisfaction in retail banking, right? So it can be this research can be done through surveys, which is quantitative, and also the measure usage rates and interviews, which are qualitative, to explore the user trust, right? So that's one thing, first main thing what we are why we are using the pragmatism approach. So the one is flexibility, which gives which address the complex financial problems because it's not a one-way traffic, right? And also the pragmatism, it focus on practical solutions over theoretical debate, right? So that's one important area for us as well. As we discussed, we are not here to create grand theories, right? So that is not the expectation from us, right? So therefore, the pragmatism will actually encourage us to provide practical solutions than having rather than telling debating over existing theories of the knowledge, right? Whereas in meaning the banking and finance, it's a applied discipline where actionable results matter more than abstract philosophical debates about truth or the reality, right? Which we discuss what philosophies comes under that. So pragmatism, it actually emphasize what works to solve real world problems. Example, let's say if you're doing a research on blockchain adaptation in cross-border payment, could blend with example case studies and the economic modeling, right? To maybe to let's say save cost, right? And the third advantage that we are having is adaptability to diverse research questions, right? So typically what happens is MSc dissertation in banking and finance, typically it require tailored approach based on the research what we pick. Example, let's say if you take the quantitative approach, right? Quantitative, it could include testing hypothesis, meaning the high interest rate might reduce the SME loan uptake, right? And if you take the qualitative example, it could be about exploring the stakeholder perception. An example research question can be research question could be, how do ethical values influence ESG investing, right? And also the pragmatism approach will allow students like us to switch or combine methods as we need, avoiding rigid adherence to one philosophy. So that's why lots of researchers, in fact, have been, following the pragmatism approach as well, right? And so as we discussed earlier also, it aligns with the industry reality. Because as we discussed earlier, the financial markets, typically it get influenced by both objective data, interest rates, GDP growth, and as well as the subjective factors as well. What are the subjective factors? Example, investor, sentiment, regulatory ethics, right? So on and so forth. So pragmatism actually acknowledge this duality, right? And which enables the research that reflect the complexities of the real world of banking and finance. Example could be analyzing the 2023 banking crisis, could involve statistical data on liquidity ratios, right? And interviews with bank executives to understand the decision making. Yeah. And another one is the ethical and value driven research. So we all know as a practitioners in banking and finance always have ethical dilemmas, right? Example, algorithm bias and financial inclusion in that matter, right? Whereas the pragmatism actually encourage for researchers like us to integrate values. Values means, axiology, while maintaining the rigor, ensuring findings are both credible and socially responsible. So example could be if you are doing a study on the, let's say, AI-driven credit scoring, it could balance the quantitative accuracy as well as the qualitative assessments of the fairness and the transparency as well. Yeah. So that's why so we should follow pragmatism approach when we are doing that, when we are doing our research. Yeah. So then, as we discussed, we'll move to the research approach, right? So research approach, again, there are two main methods that we follow, deductive and inductive, right? So as I said during the very first slide, so what we'll be using is the deductive approach, right? So if you ask what's this, deductive approach or the definition of, it's if you simply put it across, it's a top-down approach where we are trying to where we start with a theory and we develop hypothesis and test through empirical observation, right? So some of the key features would be it's rooted in the scientific research and it focus on the existing theories. Example, it can be economic models, financial hypotheses, right? And it uses the quantitative methods, meaning what are these quantitative methods? It can be, let's say, surveys, experiments, to validate whether validate or refuse our hypothesis, right? So example, if you take some of the research what we are doing right now, example, testing the efficient market hypothesis. So efficient market hypothesis, it implies that we take to take the decision, the full information are being, absorbed. That's what that high level what this efficient market hypothesis is about, right? So it's by so then what we do is we test the efficient market hypothesis by analyzing the historical stock price data to see if the market react instantaneously to new information, right? And another example can be so examining whether the Basel III regulation reduce the, let's say the bank risk taking by comparing pre and post regulation financial stability metrics, right? So the deductive, in simple terms, it's a top-down approach, and this is the approach what we'll be using, right? Where what we'll be doing is we will start with the theory, develop a hypothesis, and test them through empirical observation, right? Whereas in inductive approach, it's a bottom-up approach where the research gathers the data, build new theories or patterns from the observation. That's typically that is not what is expected at MSc level, right? So the key features, if you really summary, if you really drill it, so it focus on the understanding of the context specific phenomenon, right? Example, it can be cultural influence on the financial behavior, right? And it's often used for exploratory research with little prior theory exist, right? And if you ask the examples from banking and finance, it can be exploring such as why retail investors in emerging markets prefer gold over stocks through interviews leading to a new theory about cultural trust in tangible assets. So, right. So these are the technically, I mean, if you really look out, so these kind of research are very rare, right? Because it takes a bottom-up approach. An example, another one could be studying on fintech adaptation barriers among SMEs by analyzing case studies and deriving a framework for digital transformation challenges. Right. Again, we are trying to build new knowledge, new theories, or patterns from observations. Right. So remember, out of these two approaches, in terms of research approach, what we'll be taking is a deductive approach. So why you have to remember these, the approaches what we're taking is, guys, during our introduction or and also when you're doing the abstract. Anyone knows what the abstract is, the purpose of abstract? Anyone know what the abstract is?
So it is
It's
a
like a summary.
Right, summary. Another answer?
abstract is as a briefly we give the results and the methodology and all the other things of the total research.
Yeah, good. Yeah, in very simple word, it's if you're since you're coming from a corporate background, it's like a executive summary of a report, right? But how we write is, maybe different. It is not maybe, it is different to how we write an executive summary, but it is a summary, as you said, the essence of the research. So these keywords should come into your abstract as well, for the researcher to understand, for the the supervisor as well as the examiners to understand your thought process in relation to the research that you are doing, right? So during an abstract, you should articulate, this is a research philosophy what we have addressed, and this is my research approach, and I have taken the deductive approach, and I followed the as a research philosophy, I have followed the pragmatism, that improves the credibility of your research, rather than just saying I have taken quantitative and qualitative. When you use these technical terms, it will improve the credibility of your research, right? So even without mentioning these terms, you may have done the homework, rather on the context of the research, you may be having it. But if you do not proactively articulate it, this is what we are doing, you might not get the full marks. These are some of the areas that you can improve your scoring as well, right? So be mindful on that, and also not only during the abstract. And so if you have um, the research proposal open, so you could mention during the chapter 3 the methodology as well. So during the introduction, you had to articulate, because you had to write about 800 words on the research methodology under chapter 3. So first you are supposed to give the research introduction, then the research methodology, and the quantitative and the qualitative study that you are doing, right? So there you need to mention why we are doing this, and what's the research philosophy, research approach that you're taking, and why you are taking it as well, right? So it's important. As I said, you don't have to memorize everything, but try to remember and be conversed with the approach what we are taking, so that it will give you a solid you are creating a good impression about yourself with the supervisor, as well as the most importantly the examiner. Yeah. So again, if you are not referred the friendly guide, so that's a comprehensive document. I think you should refer that. Right. So with that, let's move to, yeah. So we discuss the difference between deductive and inductive research. Right. So with that, let's move to guys, any clarification on the inductive and the deductive approach? Right. So let's move on to research strategies, where actually we will cover about 2 slides we have put it across. But then again, um, we will not be following. So we have about I think about 6 to 7 different research strategies, but out of which what we'll be taking is the surveys, right? I mean, I think if you go to next slide, yeah, so it's somewhat evident when you see the size of the text what we have put across. So that's what we'll be using our research. But that doesn't mean that we are only using the surveys as well, because as I said, nothing is, pretty static that we will only do qualitative or quantitative, or there's there can be always overlapping, but our the core thing will be one. But that doesn't mean that we are not that doesn't mean that we are not using others. We will be using, there will be overlaps, right? So it's important that we understand what are the other options available at our disposal, right? So the first one, in terms of research strategy, so the one thing would be um, the experiment, right? So in experiment, what we do is, the purpose of experiment is, guys, to test the causal relationship. Example, meaning how changing one variable affects another, right? So example, let's say you work for a bank, and you test by whether if you offer the lower pricing for housing loans, um, will increase the loan application by applying the rate to a simple group and compare results to a control group, right? So that's sort of an experiment that you are doing, right? So the next one is a survey. So as I said, that's the one that we'll be using. So survey, typically the purpose is to collect quantitative data from large population. So when you say large, it depends on the type of research that we are doing. So as a simple example, it can be surveying about 1,000 customers to analyze the satisfaction with digital banking app and identify the uh, features driving engagement, right? As case study, as a survey, right? Then next one is the case study. So example, the purpose of the case study is to get a in-depth analysis of a real world scenario, right? You can read through this, the text what you have, right? But I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible. So it's about case study. In simple term, it's to the purpose is to do a in-depth understanding, get an in-depth understanding of the real world scenario. So example, let's say studying Goldman Sachs, I'm sure you'd have heard of, one of the leading global US banks, right? Um, and their investment strategies during the 2008 crisis to understand the effective risk mitigation tactics, right? So those are, you can't really quantify it, right? And it's not a survey. That's why it works like a case study. So by referring case studies also, that's also another research strategy, right? But then again, to achieve the objective of what we need to do, the taking purely on the case study, it will not be adequate enough, but no harm using it, right? And so the other one is, I think I may have to go to the next slide. Yeah. So other one is the action research, right? So action research, the typically how it works is the purpose is to basically it's interactive problem solving with the researchers' involvement, right? So example, let's say your bank collaborating with a researcher to design and refine a blockchain, let's say blockchain based payment system, and testing it in phases, incorporating the feedback. So that's where the researcher also part of the research, right? Then again, is it a good thing to do? Yes, of course, because you will get more hands-on about what's going on, and you'll be part of that community. But the problem is whether do you have the time frame to do that, right? But then again, if time permits, if you have the capacity, by all means, you can incorporate the action research as well, right? Nothing stopping. So then the fifth one is the grounded theory. So typically, the core purpose is to develop theories by using qualitative data. In simple terms, example can be let's say interviewing a retail customers or other retail investor to build a theory on how social media influence stock picking behavior. Again, if you ask as a theory or a concept, whether it's nice, yes, of course. But then again, the time factor and the availability of the resources will be the challenge if you're trying to take a grounded theory approach, right? Because we are building theory from a qualitative data, right? And the other one is the ethnography, right? So ethnography there, the purpose is it's a basically a an immersive study of the cultural practices. So example, it can be observing traders in Wall Street firms to understand the decision making under market volatility, right? Whether it can it be done? No, yes, definitely it can be done. But then again, the practical aspect of it would be the challenge and the resources, right? And last one is the archival research, right? So there, what happens is you analyze things as a research strategy. You purely go on the uh, you purely go on the mission of analyzing historical records or the data, right? Example, using the Federal Reserve reports from 1990 to 2020 to study the correlation between the interest rate changes and the and recession, right? So that's archival strategy. Again, very cumbersome thing to do given the time constraint and the availability of the resources may hinder your research performance. So that's why it is recommended to take the survey as we discussed during the previous slide, taking the survey as a research strategy, right? But again, I repeat, there's nothing stopping you taking certain percentage of other strategies, but your core should be limited to core should be your focus should be on this, right? Can be slight deviations here and there, but especially when you're writing the chapter 3, you should mention these terms as well. So I will be using the survey as a research strategy, so on and so forth. Yeah. Um, all right, it's 11 o'clock. Before we discuss this slide, can we break for a cup of coffee or tea? Yeah, so we'll be back in another about 5 to 6 minutes time.
Okay, sir.
Hope everyone is okay with that.
Sure,
Thank
sir.
you. Hi. Are we good to start? Yeah, is everyone in? Or any dropouts? Can you start?
Yes, we can start.
All right. Right. So welcome back. So we discussed research philosophies, research strategies, and we'll discuss research choices as well. Right? It's pretty straightforward, guys. So don't get don't worry about these terminologies. It's pretty simple. These are things what we do day in day out in our offices, right? So research choices. So we have two way of doing this, as you can clearly see. It's pretty simple graph. One is the mono method, other one is the multi method, right? So there, what happens is during mono method, we'll be using only one type of a data or approach, meaning it can be us as research using either qualitative or the quantitative approach, right? Example, if I may give you, let's say from quantitative perspective, let's say we are analyzing stock market trends by using the historical price data. Example, testing the efficient market hypothesis, right? So we are only using that in relation to, a mono method. And under mono method, let's say if you're using the qualitative data, again, only that might, confine us conducting interviews with the bank managers to, let's say, explore challenges in implementing the Basel III regulation, right? So more qualitative, but we had to only use one type of data or research. So there are certain subject streams, that we may not be. Some research may relying on one particular example, especially let's say sometimes certain streams of social science may be only involved in qualitative, right? But our method will not be able to do that. So the other one is the main two branches is a multi-method, right? So multi-method there, what happens is we'll be using multiple methods within the same paradigm, right? So it can be, as I said, a qualitative or quantitative. So there you can see two main branches. One is the multi-method quantitative and multi-method qualitative, right? So the difference is, so during the multi-method quantitative research, we are combining surveys and, let's say, transactional data analysis to study, example, the customer spending habits during economic downturns, right? So I'm giving you an example so that you can relate it better rather than just trying to uh, understand what theory says, right? So multi-method qualitative can be example combining survey and a transactional data analysis to study the customer spending habits during the economic downturn, right? And on other hand, the mixed method qualitative example, it could be doing a focus group discussion and ethnographic observation to understand the, let's say, the cultural influences on Islamic banking practices, right? So, sorry, that's the difference between the, excuse me, guys. The difference between the multi-method quantitative and the multi-method qualitative. And whereas in this part of the world and this particular sort of a subject stream that we are following, generally our researchers, or rather we take a mixed method approach, right? And I would recommend for you to follow the same thing, because you will have more flexibility to do your research if you follow the mixed method strategy, right? So even on mixed method strategy, there are two sub branches, right? So the mixed method means nothing but using the both quantitative and qualitative method in one particular uh, study of subject, right? So example, it can be the phase one can be the quantitative, analyzing the, let's say, loan default rates across 100 banks in US, right? So if you want to confine it to Sri Lanka, it can be analyzing the loan default rates across, let's say, 10 lead 10 commercial banks, 10 leading commercial banks in the country, right? And let's say the qualitative can be interviewing loan officers to identify the systematic risk which not captured by the data. If you're into branch lending or consumer credit, there are so many other variables, that that we can't predict by looking at the data points, right? So then you do qualitative research by example interviewing the loan officers to identify the systemic risk which is not captured by the data, right? And the other branch is the mixed model research. So there, what happens is um, the difference is the mixed model research. It actually integrates the quantitative and qualitative data in all stages, meaning what are these three stages? The designing, the collection, and analysis, right? So example, studying a fintech adoption, right? In terms of quantitative, it can be tracking app usage metrics. Example, it can be login frequency, transaction volume, so on and so forth. And qualitative can be the simultaneously analyzing user feedback from in-app surveys to explain the behavioral patterns, right? It's more or less similar, but there's only a slight difference between the mix method and the mixed model research, right? Only differentiate is the mixed model research. We integrate both qualitative and quantitative data in all the stages. So what are the stages? Designing, collecting, collection, and analysis, right? So, but broadly speaking, you don't have to really, get into the granular level of to articulate that. Okay, I'm following the mixed method research or the mixed model research. So broadly, if you put it across as we are following the mixed method research, that should be sufficient at MSc level. So we don't generally the examiners do not expect. Nothing prevent you mentioning by all means, but one thing what you got to be mindful is the more theories, the more concept that you adapt, it will increase your word count as well, right? So you have to be clear on what to write and what not to write, because what happens is, yes, you can write about all the technical stuff, but end of the day, if you exceed the number of words, more than the points that you gain, you will lose certain points by not being able to concise and adapt it to the guidelines given by the university, right? Right. So let's move on to any clarification, guys, on this. If not, I can move to the next slide. If you have any question, please raise your hand. Right. So the other peel of the onion is the time horizons, right? So there are two major ways of doing it. One is the cross-sectional study, right? So cross-sectional study, from the definition per se, it is about a research that is conducted at a single point in time to capture a snapshot of a situation, right? So example can be bank conducts a customer satisfaction survey in, let's say, Q1 in 2025 to assess the client perception of its new mobile banking app, right? So if you really think through, so it provides you instant insight into the user experience, but it doesn't track changes over time, right? So what happens is that might have certain pluses and minuses, because it's all depend on the, let's say you get this survey immediately after having a bad experience with your branch or from the mobile app itself. Let's say due to some reason the Lanka Pay was down and certain transaction didn't go through. Maybe Lanka Pay was down only for let's say for an example due to a interbank bank to bank safe limit. There are safe limitations, safe volume limitations, especially the small scale banks have this problem. So when the bank limit exceeds, the customer transaction will get declined. So unfortunately, you are getting this. The customer is getting this you are doing this survey at that particular time. So despite you are being a super app, right? Still they will mark it as horrible because people make spontaneous decisions, especially in relation to, especially in relation to bad experiences, right? So that's something very common in Sri Lanka. So that's why the cross-sectional study only capture the single point of time, right? So it works both good and bad for your studies because it only takes a particular snapshot of the situation, and it won't change. It doesn't track the changes over a period of time, right? So in contrast, so the other study what we have, or rather the design what we have, the longitudinal study. So there, where the research is being carried out over an extended period of time, and we observe the trends. Sorry, trends or the excuse me, guys. So we analyze the trends or the changes over a period of time, right? Example, it can be tracking the, let's say, impact of interest rates between 2022 to 2024 fourth quarter on let's say housing loan application across multiple quarters to analyze the borrowing behavioral shifts, right? So this is a reflection of a long-term patterns and casual relationships. So that's a sort of a the difference between the cross-sectional and longitudinal study, right? So that doesn't mean that neither one is better than the other one, right? So both are equally important. It's all depend on the type of study what you are doing. So therefore, I can't tell you we are only taking the cross section study in either longitudinal design. So it's all up to you, right? There are no limitations. Because why it matters is, as I said earlier, the cross sectional, it's a quick insights for immediate decision taking. Example, to launch new product, right? Whereas longitudinal method or other study, it's about understanding the evolving trends, especially the regulatory impacts. Let's say the policy rate. I mean, I'm sure you'd have seen how most of our customers, complains. Look, central bank has reduced the rates, but banks are not reducing the rate because it won't happen overnight, right? Because it happens over a period of time. So studying it. So example, if someone can do a study on, what sort of I don't think I have not seen that kind of study. What's the actual, because I think governor always used to say that okay, it will take some time to the market get adjusted, so on and so forth. I think if someone can do a study based on the time frame that it would take to the market get adjusted after publishing the policy rates, that would be that would be interesting. Even I mean that kind of study in fact will help the central bank as well when they are employing certain policy decisions, right? So that example, if someone found that based on the historical research for the last 10 years, whatever the policy instruments, it can be interest rate or the inflation policy adjustment that they're doing, for it to feel the go to the market. If it's take 3 months time, even central bank can plan ahead, right? I don't know, just saying. So that's the beauty of longitudinal um, research or other studies, right? Because it understand the regulatory impact and the market cycles over a period of time, right? Yeah, so that's basically the time horizon for you. Any questions, guys, so far? If not, I can move to the data collection and analysis, right? So this slide basically articulate the difference between the qualitative and quantitative data approach, right? So I'll start off with the quantitative data. So as it clearly says, the quantitative data, it's about trying to understand the problem by through the numerical data, which is first collected through a structured method. So that's that's something very important to use that structured method, because sometimes even the way that you're collecting is also through a structured method. Otherwise, you will not just, throw a piece of air and get someone to do the numbers. No, right? But then again, it's important that we use these certain academic terms, right? The structured methods, because those, minor things will really tick lots of boxes with the, so for example, supervisor, the examiners. So remember, the examiners are purely coming from, they are not the market practitioners, right? So the person, the people, the set of people who are giving you marks are the guys who comes with a very strong academic background, and they respect your knowledge, right? And they feel really happy, more than you trying to push your industry terms to them. In contrast, if you adapt the terms that they read, that will make them really, really happy, right? Sometimes I have seen, certain researchers, if you look at the findings of the research, sometimes in terms of the practicality or in terms of the, let's say, the impact, sometimes the research which scored higher marks may have less impact, but still the way it's written, the terminologies that the researcher has used actually made that different, right? um, I mean, not all the time. Sometimes, I have seen, I can recall what those, two research. I mean, there are some exciting ones as well. But then again, it's important to use these, terms, right? Structured method, rather than just saying we are using we are collecting data. Rather than just saying that, okay, we collect data through structured method. Example, the surveys, the experiments, so on and so forth, right? And what we do is we get this data and we analyze by using statistical tools, right? It can be, the statistical tools such as, regression and correlation. And also, guys, if possible, again, it's not mandatory, especially I know that since you guys are coming from most of the guys are from the banking or banking and finance or more related field, most of you all may be using quantitative data collection, right? So if possible, rather than confine it to Excel, if you can use Minitab or SPSS, those are the professional statistical data modeling softwares, right? Which are, widely used by leading research firms, PhD, scholars. So if you can use that, that will really improve the credibility of your studies, right? Again, the outcome will be the same. Example, correlation, regression, you can do it on Excel, right? You know the formula, it's very pretty simple formula. But when you use, I'm giving you more practical insights, right? So when you use that kind of interfaces or other platforms, the outcome is, it will articulate certain, uh, metrics, right? Or other certain, the methodology to, arrive at those numbers. Because on Excel, you will not see anything. You just, populate the figure and it throws you the number. But then again, when you do it on SPSS or the Minitab, and there are and guys, since the research is for only short period of time, so you can actually use the free, the trial version as well. That should be good enough, right? But unfortunately, for the guys who are doing the PhD or the DBAs, can't really use the trial version because the time duration what we take is very long, right? So as a result, unfortunately, we had to, spend the full amount, because there aren't any, crack versions like, Microsoft. So we had to, stomach the full cost, right? But then again, not a must, right? So now don't go and say, hey, look, Asitha told us to, use the Minitab or SPSS. Mandatory. It's not mandatory, but definitely it will enrich and it will really uplift the presentation of the data, right? And you will have the high probability of getting high marks, right? So just think about it. Again, it's optional and it's free, and the trial version is, free as well. All what it will cost is, a couple of promotional emails that you'll be getting from the company who's, providing this platform, right? It will cost you nothing for the trial version. I think trial version will last for about, I think, 1 month or 2 months. I'm not sure, because I have not, used it for a long period of time, the free version. So just think about it. Yeah. Yeah, so we have been discussing about the quantitative data, right? Using the statistical tools and to understand the regression, the correlation, right? So on and so forth, and to forecast it. So the example can be again pretty simple. Let's say we collate data, and bank is using a uh, customer survey to measure the satisfaction of online banking with a 1 to 5 rating, right? And the statistical analysis reveals that probably might reveal that 75% of the customer rates abusability as excellent and correlating with a high retention rate. So that's how you arrive from the quantitative data, right? Whereas in qualitative data, again, it's pretty simple as you read it from the topic itself. It's about non-numerical data capturing, let's say, opinions, behaviors, or context, right? Through example can be interviews, observations, so on and so forth. And analysis can be thematic, coding or content analysis, right? Example, how we incorporate it to the banking finance would be, let's say, in terms of data collection. Let's say you are having set of interviews with wealth managers, right? Set of wealth managers to understand to explore the challenges in advising clients on ESG investments, right? Get their feedback. And so the themes like let's say sometimes what you will be arriving at is the lack of standardized metrics, or the client skepticism about the might emerge as a barriers in terms of ESG adaptation, right? So those are more of a qualitative approaches. Yeah. So that's a difference between both qualitative and quantitative data. So as we discuss, so most of you all will be using the both data types, qualitative data as well as quantitative data as well. Yeah. Yeah, so again, just to summarize on the previous slide before I come to the final slide. So it's about in relation to quantitative. So the data types are purely numbers, percentages, and averages, right? And the methods what we'll be using is the surveys, experiments, and the transactional data, right? And examples we already discussed in relation to with compared to quantitative, the qualitative, we analyze the text, images, narratives, right? And the methods what we'll be using is interviews, focus group discussions, case studies, so on and so forth, right? So those are the key difference between the qualitative and quantitative. And the last one is, so basically this will help you to understand what are the areas that we will be focusing. Again, having said that, you should, there's no absolute reason to stick to these areas, the sections marked in red, but these are the approaches that we'll be taking, or are the recommended ones to use it, so that you will have the more flexibility to conclude your research, right? So as you can see, in terms of the three key philosophies, rather 3 or 4 philosophies: positivism, realism, interpretarism, and the pragmatism. So we'll be using the pragmatism, right? And of course, the research approach, instead of inductive, we'll be taking the deductive approach as well. And in terms of research strategy, will be so there are a few strategies what we discuss: experiment, case study, action research, grounded theory, ethnography. So out of that, we'll be using the survey method, right? Because of the flexibility that it will gives, right? In relation to research choices, so it is recommended to use the mixed method research, because that will give you the flexibility to conduct your research, and so the techniques and in relation to the time horizon, it makes sense to take the cross-sectional, because being mindful on the fact that your research will be limited to 6 months, whereas typically the PhD or the doctoral students typically take the longitudinal research, because that the time span is much broader. But in your case, it's perfectly fine to take the cross-section, because both are fine. There's nothing limiting to say that, look, cross-section, since it's a one snapshot, it's bad, short, it's bad. So nothing like that, right? So it depends on the topic that you take. And yeah, so basically those are the critical ones that you have to remember. And as I said earlier, guys, so remember, when you're writing your abstract and writing the introductions in relevant chapters, use these terminologies and briefly explain, why you're doing this as well. And most importantly, link the literature as well, right? Refer some of these. So example, if you're writing, so you can't just say, okay, I'm using pragmatism because my lecturer told me, right? That's not going to happen. So what you do is, let's say if you're using the pragmatism approach, you read 2 or 3 research articles and ask sorry and ask and refer why they are proposing to use pragmatism approach. Example, let's say the Saunders et al. Said, because of XXX, I'm using the pragmatism approach, right? And let's say the Lewis Carl said, uh, I'm the pragmatism is recommended because of these reasons, right? Then you have to say, hey, look, my research is, also my research based on this particular topic, right? So therefore, based on my requirement, it makes sense to follow this, and my choice is validated by these 2, 3 um, previous researchers as well, right? That's how you connect. If not just writing, I'm using the pragmatism, it's not gonna work, right? You have to justify why you're using this as well. An example, even let's say you may be taking 2 or 3 research, right, 2 or 3 theories, and so when you refer those theories, you can figure that those guys also have followed those researchers also have followed the same approach. Let's say same what are the topic that you follow, they have taken directive approach. So you can say that, you look, based on my topic, based on how my research questions are being defined, so I'll be using the research approach will be deductive approach, because the historical research done on this particular theme, these researchers also done these researches by using the deductive positivism approach, right? So that's how you connect it. But abstract ඔක්කොම දාන්නේ, right? Abstract, you keep it in one line. You just say, we have used the pragmatism as research philosophy, and my approach is deductive approach, right? Likewise, that's only one line. But during your chapters, you have to elaborate, let's say on the chapter 3 methodology, then you have to clearly articulate with proper references why you're doing this, who has done this before, and why it suits your research approach. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the most important piece of this particular topic, because as I said, even on the research topic about good 800, let me go to the friendly guide. Yeah, so about guys, have you read is anyone who have not referred the friendly guide yet? Hamon Balatin. Hope you guys are there and not fallen asleep. So if you are not read it as yet, if you are not read, that's alarming, right? You are in serious trouble, my friends, trust me. So if you go to the first, rather say page number 2, let me share in case. Friendly guide I can upload the headers. Window. Friendly guide. Can you see my screen?
Yes, can see.
All right. So if you can see, so out of the research proposal, you are supposed to write 2,500 words there, and introduction 550. So if you can see, good 1,600, right? So more than more than about 60% of the work goes to literature review and methodology, right? So there you can elaborate and write literature review and methodology. You can see 1,600 words, 800 words for literature review and 800 another set of words for methodology. Yeah. Have you all decided on the research topic? Would you like to share the research topic, for the benefit of your colleagues? And if you need any clarification, we have a few more minutes left, so you can make use of that time. Can we understand where you are, at least in terms of the research proposal? I don't want to, put you on the spot by picking individual names because it's a senior set of, students. So if you can just, for the benefit of the your colleagues, if you could, just mention where you are and what are some of the problems that you have encountered. So I mean that's the whole purpose of doing a MSc, right, guys? So that's why I said have you all formed study groups? I know WhatsApp group is being created. I'm aware of it. At least do you all have any study groups? Because just because you form a WhatsApp group, that doesn't mean that all of you will be meeting at the same time, because we work for different banks, live in different places, right? Attached to even the same branch, same bank, we maybe belongs to different branches, different sections. So sometimes you may be having 3 or 4, study groups based on your, preferences. Have you all have that kind of interaction? So make use of these, platforms to interact and discuss. Otherwise, as I said, research is a team game. Though you're writing it alone, these are the teamwork really matters.
Hi.
Hi, is this Malshani?
Yes. I just have one question. Like in terms of the research topic, for now, like what I have in mind is something on the factors affecting like housing prices, but I'm not too sure like how I can link that to a survey.
Okay. What's your exact, is that your exact research topic, Malshani?
It's basically to sort of see what are like the factors that would have an impact on housing prices.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah, I think the topic needs to be further refined, Malshani, because it's a very broad. I think it looks okay, but you have to further narrow it because it's still at very broad level. So you have to specific, because housing market technically which market, which industry, which because there are if you're looking at are you looking at the Sri Lankan context or the South Asian context, global context, or which area? So likewise, we have to further refine it. Otherwise, you'll be in terms of, you'll have challenges in terms of gathering data, um, even if you want to do a survey or surveys and stuff, let's say focus group discussion, it will be very difficult if your theme is very broad. So you may have to really narrow it. And also even the housing market, also you have to further refine it and see. I mean, I'm going beyond your research, the original question that you asked. Further refine it. Okay, what sort of when you say housing market, because there are lots of variables, right? The upper end, the affluent market, the mass market housing schemes. I'm sure. I think we had one student from the, I think, Prime Lands, if I'm not mistaken. So he should be able to comment. Would you mind commenting on that? I can't remember his name. I'm so sorry. I said I'm very bad with names. There was a student from the Prime Lands, I think. Oh, Prime, oh, some form of a real estate developer. I can't remember the. Are you in today? All right. So this is a downside of virtual classes. Anyway, in relation to the housing market, Malchani, so there are property market or housing market, whatever you call it. Again, you had to really define it. Otherwise, collating data, before the survey, before discussing about survey, the first thing you have to be really absolutely clear about the exact area that you are gonna focus. Otherwise, it will be very broad, and your findings also will be very varied. So I'll give you example. So when you say, if you take the property market, let's say housing market, and there can be, there are certain developers, example, let's say Trizen. Again, I'm not picking any brands, right? I'm just taking for learning purpose, right? So it can be, you may be, if you're not focused, we may be ended up, interviewing or quality data published by the JKH in relation to areas like Trizen, or it can be properties like, iconic by, is it access? I can't remember, So there are different layers of the top end house developers, and it can be, let's say, the Shangri-La properties, right? Or it can be mid-tier players, right? So the example, the Prime brand can be, mix, they're catering to both, right? Mid market as well as a top end market through the Prime brand, I think, in both place. And below that, there are different, another tier 3 type of, retail, the housing providers as well. So we got to be really narrowed on what market that we are defining. Otherwise, you will have I'm referring to everyone now, not only her. Thank you very much for being open and asking that question. So you have to be really narrow, Marshani. And so your question was to how to do a survey, is it?
Yeah. So I think in terms of the market, I was thinking of Colombo, but like in terms of the location, but I just wasn't sure how I can link that to a survey, like to the normal, like the population.
Yeah. So when your research topic was exactly what factors affecting the housing market.
Housing market, like the prices, like.
Sorry, I didn't get a housing market prices. You said, is it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Then at least, somewhat, narrowing down, but you had to, further refine it. So have you done any further, have you read the research, the historical research done on this space? Firstly, are there any researchers in relation to this particular topic, Malchani, in Sri Lankan context?
Yes. No, in Sri Lanka, no, but like I've seen like few in like some few countries, but
Right.
not in Sri Lanka.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think first, yeah, that's fine. But could have been better at least if there had been, 2 or 3, so that you can actually directly link it, because there will be, so typically the factors could be, I don't know what, because I have not read any extensive research in relation to this particular topic, but broadly speaking, with my experience, some of the factors can be one thing can be the interest rate, right? Interest rate and the present example. Again, it's depend on the location that you're doing the research, right? The demand for property, because if you're doing the research based on the Colombo, there's a greater demand. But if you do housing market prices around in down south, it can be a completely different conversation, right? And again, existing demand for the it can be both supply, it can be subject to both supply side and the demand side as well, right? Because sometimes there can be a demand, but there won't be a supply, and vice versa as well. So so survey can be done, Malshani, provided that you read the existing literature and identify what are those drivers, right? You need to identify what are those 3 or 4 drivers. Once you define that, let's assume that those are the 3 variables. That may not be the correct one, but in the interest of time, the interest rate and the demand for property and the disposable income, right? So that also matters. No? Let's say those 3 variables. So based on those 3 variables, you can conduct the survey by using both quantitative and qualitative data, right? Provided example, disposable income, if they're willing to declare their incomes, maybe anonymously, yes, people might do. So you can do it like that actually.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
but the important is, Malshani, be specific on exactly on the specific areas that you want to do. That will make your life much more easy. Now, even once we drill it to these 3, now you figure that it can be done, right? The survey.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
No problem, Malshani. Anyone would like to share the Malshani? Thank you very much again for taking up, because that will help us to share the knowledge and leverage on what we have done so far. We have few more minutes. Would we can take another one more question, something like that, because because we have to really get this thing right. This topic is very, very important. Topic as well as other areas and any other challenges that you have come across, so that if you could share it, we can actually have a chat so that other people also can learn from the challenges that you have had in the past, if you are comfortable of sharing.
Nice. Hi, sir. Yes, I have a topic. Yeah. So,
Hi. May I know
yeah.
whom I'm speaking to?
It's Imran.
Hi, Imran. You are
Yes.
you at the next itself today?
Yes. Yesterday.
Ah,
Yes. We're
okay.
with another colleague as well.
Right. Okay. Nice.
So, regarding the topic, of course, I just came across a topic like impact of macroeconomic indicators on stock market performance. Is it like a narrow down? Basically, we are trying to identify the GDP growth rate, inflation rate, unemployment. These factors, how it would influence the stock markets. Could that be a good topic to start with? Is it
Yeah.
like a broad?
Honestly, I can't tell you it's a good or bad, Imran, because I need to
Yeah.
sit down and understand what are the other what are the drivers that you're trying to do, what are your independent variables, dependent variables. Based on that only, I can tell you whether it's good or bad. But as a topic, it's interesting. So again, my first question: are there any had there been any research done internationally, globally, and locally?
I think internationally, yes, of course, there are some studies been conducted, but locally, I don't think there had been any studies, I believe.
Okay. And have you found any theories in relation to that? How does sorry, what's the topic again you said?
Impact
How?
of macroeconomic indicators on stock market performance.
Right.
Macroeconomic factors.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, Imran, but again, when you say macroeconomic factors, what are those macroeconomic factors? Because there are so many macroeconomic factors
Yeah.
that will
So
affect the stock market, right?
yeah, basically, we are talking about GDP growth rate, inflation rate, unemployment rate, interest rate,
Yeah.
so on. Yeah.
Yeah. So then at your level, meaning at the MSc level, Imran, it makes sense to further narrow it, because macroeconomic, it's a very, as it says, it's very broader topic. And even so the one thing is, you will have the person, you have the problem of defining it, what are those macroeconomic variables. So unless otherwise you are really specific about what's gonna affect, it will be very difficult for you to really be focused, right? But as a subject, it's sounds interesting, but try to narrow it further.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to refine it further.
Yeah. And also stock market performance also in relation to what is it is it a overall market
Oh, overall
ASPI
market.
or the in terms of the dividends payout. So you have to be really
Okay.
I'm not an equity market specialist. So you got to be really, when you say stock market performance, you need to really define which point, which indicator that you're looking at, whether it's PE ratios or I don't know. So you need to really define what that both independent and independent variable that will make your life much easier.
Okay.
But
Okay,
I'm sure that will be an interesting one for the local market actually, if there aren't any research being done.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, sir. This is Ashira here.
Yes, Ashira.
I was also thinking some research somewhat what Imran was mentioning. But my question today, after the discussion we had today, was how do I couple that sort of a thing with the survey? Because all these macroeconomic sort of indicators are sort of historical indicators that we can find in like a data set, not in a survey context. I don't know how. Like equity market stuff can be relating to macroeconomic stuff. How can it be coupled up with a survey? That's
no, you can actually. What's your, may I know the research topic actually, if you don't mind?
No, I was not. I have not narrowed down to a research topic, but I was anyway going to focus on the stock market, and macroeconomic factors was another thing I was thinking about, which sort of stock sector to be exact, or the macroeconomic. I was not focused on the entire market like a sector. I was thinking about mainly to real estate. I was wanting, but
stocks in relation to real estate market.
Real estate companies. So my question is, how can I couple that with a survey?
No. So that's I said, actually nothing stopping. So though it's not a hard coded one, it is the recommended, but nothing stopping. You using both other qualitative and quantitative metrics. That's absolutely no limitations. There's absolutely no problem with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that question.
Thank you.
It is only recommended only, but again, as I said earlier, nothing stopping us using any other research philosophies, any other research strategies, any time horizon. Absolutely, nothing stopping. Provided you can do it. Absolutely nothing stopping.
Yeah, finding the data is where I'm stuck now. Yeah. Thanks.
No problem. So first, actually, try to narrow the. I think you got off to a start to narrowing down the topic because as I think that goes to Imran as well, because you can't only take the stock market performance, because when you say stock market performance, that's that includes so many industries, right? The service sector, the banking sector, real estate, trading, there are mining, so there are so many industries. So it's a reflection of the total output of the performance of entire cluster, entire subsegment. So it makes sense to concentrate on one particular piece where you will have the data. Otherwise, it will be too broad to analyze, because and also unfortunately, if there are two let's say industries with negative correlation, then your life will be very, very miserable, right? Because you will not be able to come to a conclusion, right? There are certain industries which does not complement each other. No? Example, it can be what are those industries which are not complementing, have a negative correlation, which not, example, let's say if someone industry with a positive correlation, which will be easy. Example, if the construction if the construction industry is, booming, there'll be positive impact on the, banking and finance as well. I don't know. I have not read in research or neither have done any research on that. But in general perspective, there can be positive correlation, right? So likewise, there'll be certain industries who might, goes other way around. Example, if the emergence of IT, emergence of, let's say, IT related, stocks might have a negative impact on industries which are labor intense, right? I'm just making it up, right? So you get what I'm saying, right? Then you will never ever able to come to a conclusion because these are pulling to two different directions, right? As a research, it will be very interesting to do that research, but then again, within 6 months, can you do that sort of a broader analysis? Will be a challenge. So it's perfectly fine to keep it, narrow it as much as possible. Sample but drop it to a level where you will have the adequate amount of samples, not runs in millions, but couple of thousands would be much a controllable manner. All right then. So again, thanks Imran, Malshani, and Ashira for being open and asking that question. So that actually gives me a sense of where we at right now. So I think we got off to a start. So refine it. So I'm sure you have been listening to our conversation that we have been having with Imran, Malshani, and Ashira. So based on that, try to refine it as much as possible, guys. Right. So don't try to be, because what happens is remember what you have to remember is the research what you see are not published by the MSc level researchers, right? Because generally the index articles, if you had gone through the sites that I've recommended, so those are the proper good ones. Those guys are the real sort of the researchers who have been conducting research for universities for years, and those are a seasoned researchers, right? So as an example, and also they have the adequate time to do that as well. So as a result, so their topics are much broader, right? Very broad, because they have the adequate and some of the research, if you read through, there could be a certain declaration to say that, look, this research was funded by, let's say, Coca-Cola. This research was funded by some large corporation, or maybe funded by another university or the government, so that they have been doing it full time, so that they can get broad as much as possible, because they have the adequate technology, meaning the technology. When I say technology, the softwares, even to collect, let's say they could have done 1,000 odd focus group discussions by employing another 5 or 6 researchers, right? Because they have been given the funding for that, so they have the resources, they have the time, and they have the financial capabilities as well. So don't go by what is published out there and try to implicate it, try to replicate to the local market. Rather, you can take the concept but not to your particular research, because your research at MSc level and you're doing it for an exam, right? So be mindful on that as well. So don't try to be broad as you see on paper. So try to narrow it. So you can take the essence. I say the research, the topic of Imran, how does the macroeconomic fundamental would affect the stock market? Honestly, Mother, you can write a book. You can write a book, right? That's huge content. So keep it as a core. But when you're doing it, you drill it down to the narrowest level that you have the comfort factor of collating data, the information, the right people do the sample survey, so on and so forth, right? Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. All right. Yeah. So I think our time is up. Right. So until since there aren't any questions, we can move on. And guys, as I said, start doing the research proposal. Especially refine the research topic and start ideally speaking, you should be at the section number 2. Ideally, you should have done about 1,000, at least 1,000 words by now. So if not, you are running behind, running late, So I would request for the benefit of you. I understand the challenges what we have, the family commitments and the office commitment still at the beginning of the year. I perfectly understand because I'm also have the same cycle even yesterday. Yesterday until 1 o'clock I was up because I only prepare on Friday night because other days I honestly can't because I have my own studies and I have my other family commitments, my sporting commitments. So managing time is very difficult, but if you undertake a responsibility, you have to deliver, right? So that's a promise. Especially you are pumping your own money, so you need to give that. You need to pay the right dividend for yourself, right? So spend that, cut down on, as I said, late Friday nights. Try to read through what we discussed last time. Just go through the slides and understand what we are going to discuss or what we have discussed and analyze and see where am I in relation to the research proposal, and create a study group for yourself. You don't have to kill yourself on your own. uh, you can always park that burden to your the friends who are in the class and share knowledge and exchange views. So that's how I learned. I did my MBA around 2000, about almost 12, 13 years back. So that's how I learned. I had a fantastic group from, so I can remember. So I'm the only guy from the bank and finance sector. And there were gentlemen from pharmaceutical and military, which later he went on to the private sector as a HR guy, and manufacturing. So that's quite interesting when we have the discussions. How we always tend to see things from the banker's point of view, right? Or from the core profession what we follow, but they see things from the different perspective. Actually, you can create a different create a different image or the picture about the industry and even on the certain markets, right? So study groups are really, really important, right? If you have not done it, please get hold of 2 or 3 or 4 guys, and maybe you can go out for a drink and have a chat about your research over a drink as well. I mean, nothing stopping. We had done that. So we used to go to the Air Force executive officers mess, and we used to have a chat about our the research, right? So and you develop the network, and you become good friends, and you have someone who can look up to if you need any support on any other different industries. That's the beauty of doing a MSc, right? It's not about getting the highest marks. By all means, you can do that, right? It's not about getting the highest marks. It's about building your network, having friends, and in learning from each other and enrich ourselves both academically, personally, and professionally. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much, guys. I think we spoke a lot.
So the
So thank
next
you.
few classes also, are we going to have it online or are we going to have it physically?
I think as per the schedule, if I'm not mistaken, these are online classes. Probably
Yes. It's virtual, sir.
it's virtual, no? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
All right then. So thank you very much for your active participation, and have a pleasant weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.